She rejected my future wife because I'm a billionaire. This is Elon Musk, and let me tell you something before you go deeper into this story. People often believe money solves everything. They believe wealth makes life easier, removes rejection, and silences critics. But in reality, the richer you become, the more layers of truth you uncover. Some people will stand by you because of your vision, and some will walk away because of your wealth. The irony is, money can build rockets to Mars, but it cannot buy loyalty or genuine love. Keep that in mind while listening to this story, because the truth you're about to hear will surprise you more than anything I can build in SpaceX. His voice fades, and the narration begins. I never thought that being a billionaire would become both my greatest blessing and my deepest curse. You might assume wealth means open doors, invitations, smiles, and respect everywhere you go. And yes, it does, for a while. But hidden inside those open doors are hearts that secretly judge you, not for who you are, but for what you own. And that judgment is exactly what destroyed one of the most precious relationships in my life. It all started when I met her. She wasn't like the others. Her smile wasn't chasing a camera. Her laugh wasn't faked for attention. She carried herself with a quiet elegance, the kind that makes you pause even in a crowded room. I remember the very first day, we bumped into each other at a charity event, of all places. She wasn't staring at me because of my status. She wasn't impressed by the cameras flashing around. She was simply herself. For the first time in years, I felt invisible in the best way possible. Not invisible because people didn't notice me, but invisible because she looked straight past the billionaire name, and saw me, the man. We started talking. Slowly, cautiously. I had met thousands of people before, but every time I spoke to her, it was like discovering a new world. She loved books more than diamonds, conversations more than cars, silence more than parties. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, this is the woman I had been waiting for all along. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Our bond grew like roots underground, hidden from the world but strong, unshakable. I had decided in my heart, she was the one. My future wife. But life, as always, had another plan. One evening, I decided to introduce her to someone close to me. Someone who had always been part of my inner circle, someone I trusted like family. Let's call her the gatekeeper. Because in many ways, she believed it was her role to protect me from people. The moment they met, I noticed it. That cold stare. That fake smile. That unspoken tension. My future wife tried her best. She was polite, respectful, and kind. But the gatekeeper didn't see her heart. She didn't see the warmth, the intelligence, the simplicity. No. She saw one thing only, a threat. Later that night, when the two of us were alone, she didn't hesitate. "She's not right for you," she said sharply. I frowned. "What do you mean she's not right? You barely spoke to her." "That's all I needed," she shot back. "She doesn't belong in your world. She won't survive it. You're a billionaire, and she's ordinary. She'll never fit in. People will laugh. she'll drag you down. Her words pierced me, but not because they were true, because they revealed something darker. It wasn't about protecting me. It was about controlling me. About deciding who was worthy of standing by my side. But what hurt the most was what happened next. The gatekeeper didn't just disapprove. She acted. Quietly, behind my back, she poisoned the air. She spoke to her. She whispered lies. She sowed seeds of doubt. And slowly, painfully, I saw the woman I loved begin to fade. Her calls grew shorter. Her laughter turned into silence. And one day, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said words that shattered me. I can't do this anymore. You deserve someone better. Someone from your world. I froze. Better? You are my world. But she shook her head, and before I could stop her, she walked away. Not because she didn't love me, but because someone else convinced her that love was not enough when wealth stood in the way. I remember that night vividly. I sat alone in my penthouse, staring at the city lights below. Billions in the bank. Skyscrapers with my name on them. Businesses in every continent. Yet not a single thing I owned could bring her back. That's when I realized the cruel truth. Being a billionaire doesn't just attract gold diggers, it also attracts gatekeepers. People who think they have the right to decide who is worthy of your love, simply because your wealth makes you different. She was gone. Rejected. Not by me, but by the shadow of my own fortune. And as the days passed, I kept asking myself, was this the price of wealth? To gain the world, but lose the one person who saw me as human, not as headlines? But this story doesn't end there. Because even though she was gone, destiny had other ways of testing me. And soon, the same woman who had rejected my future wife would face consequences she never expected. The night after she left, silence became my only companion. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room, but fills your heart with a weight so heavy you can barely breathe. I had all the noise of the city around me, horns blaring, helicopters flying, the constant hum of a city that never slept, but inside, there was nothing but emptiness. I replayed every moment in my head, her laughter, her touch, her gentle words. And then, the image of her tears, the tremble in her voice when she said goodbye. I knew she hadn't walked away because she stopped loving me. She walked away because someone else had poisoned her hope. That someone was the gatekeeper. She thought she was protecting me, but what she really did was tear apart the only thing that had ever felt real. The more I thought about it, the more anger built inside me. I had trusted her for years, let her into my inner circle, believed she had my best interests at heart. But now, I could see it clearly, she wasn't protecting me. She was protecting her control over me. And the price of that control was the woman I loved. Weeks passed. My work piled up, board meetings, investor calls, charity events. On the outside, I was the same man, sharp suit, confident smile, billionaire businessman. But inside, I was bleeding. No one noticed, of course. People rarely notice pain when it's hidden behind wealth. They assume success means happiness. They assume money cures heartbreak. But let me tell you this, it doesn't. In fact, money makes heartbreak worse. Because when you're rich, people assume you can just buy your way out of pain. Buy another car, another mansion, another partner. They don't realize that what you're really craving is something no amount of money can ever replace: authenticity. One evening, as I sat alone in my office, a friend of mine walked in. Not a business associate, not a bodyguard, but a real friend. One of the few who knew me before I became the billionaire. He took one look at me and said, "You've changed." What happened? For a moment, I didn't answer. But then, the words spilled out. I told him everything, about her, about the gatekeeper, about the rejection that wasn't really hers but was forced upon her. When I finished, he leaned back and said something I'll never forget. "Do you realize what just happened? She didn't reject you. She rejected the walls around you. The walls built by money, fame, and people like her who think they know what's best for you. But those walls are not you. They are just cages disguised as castles." His words hit me like a thunderclap. I decided that night I wasn't going to let this end with her walking away forever. I wasn't going to let someone else decide who was worthy of loving me. But first, I needed to understand something deeper. Why did the gatekeeper do this? What was her real motive? I started digging. Quietly. Behind the scenes. Billionaires don't just build companies, we build networks of information. And when I turned that network toward her, the truth shocked me. She wasn't afraid my future wife wouldn't fit in. She was afraid of losing her own influence. For years, she had been the closest one in my circle, the voice that whispered advice, the hand that guided my steps. But when my future wife came into the picture, all of that began to crumble. Suddenly, I was listening to someone else. I was smiling more, spending less time locked in meetings, more time in quiet parks and bookshops. I was becoming human again. And that scared her. Because for people like her, power over someone like me was worth more than money. And she was willing to sacrifice my happiness to keep it. The realization burned in me. I had always believed money reveals people. It doesn't change them, it just shows who they really are. And now I was seeing the truth about her. She wasn't my protector. She was my captor, hiding behind the illusion of loyalty. But here's the twist. Even though I knew the truth, I couldn't just rush to my future wife and explain. Because by now, she believed she was unworthy. She believed she didn't belong. And no amount of words could erase the lies that had been planted in her heart. So I waited. I watched. I planned. And slowly, destiny began to shift. It happened one night at a high-profile gala. I was seated at the center table, surrounded by executives, celebrities, and politicians. Cameras flashed. Laughter echoed. The gatekeeper was right there beside me, smiling as though nothing had ever happened. But then, across the room, I saw her. My heart stopped. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't part of this world. Yet somehow, fate had brought her to the same place, the same night. She looked different, more guarded, more distant, but her eyes, those same eyes that once saw through all my walls, met mine. And in that instant, everything came rushing back. The gatekeeper noticed, of course. She always noticed. And the fire in her eyes told me one thing: she would not let this happen. Not without a fight. What she didn't realize, though, was that the fight had already begun. The gala glittered like a palace of illusions. Chandeliers spilled golden light across the room, the kind of light that hides more than it reveals. Politicians laughed too loudly, businessmen shook hands too tightly, and cameras captured smiles that meant nothing at all. I had been to 1,000 events like this. Normally, I wore my mask well, smiling when expected, speaking with authority, making promises I didn't always believe in. But that night, my mask cracked the moment I saw her. She stood near the edge of the hall, wearing a simple dress that somehow outshone every diamond in the room. She wasn't dripping in jewels, she wasn't surrounded by admirers. She was just herself. And still, she drew me in like gravity itself. But her eyes, those betrayed her. They weren't filled with the warmth I once knew. They were colder now, uncertain, as if reminding herself of the distance she had chosen. The gatekeeper noticed instantly. Her hand brushed my sleeve, her voice low, sharp, "Don't look at her." I turned my head slowly toward her, forcing a calm expression. "Why not?" "Because she doesn't belong here," she hissed. "I told you before. Let it go." But I couldn't let it go. Not this time. As the evening went on, I tried to focus. I gave my speech. I shook hands. I played the role of the billionaire everyone expected me to be. But every chance I got, my eyes searched for her. And every time, I found her looking away, as if afraid that even eye contact would burn the fragile bridge between us. Finally, fate gave me an opening. During the dinner break, I slipped away from my table, weaving through the crowd until I reached her. She startled when she saw me, almost dropping the glass in her hand. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I could say the same to you," I replied softly. Her lips trembled, but she forced herself to stay composed. "You need to go back. People are watching." "I don't care who's watching," I said firmly. "I only care about one thing: why did you really leave me?" Her eyes darted past me, toward the gatekeeper, who was glaring from across the room. I saw the fear in her glance, the way her shoulders stiffened. "She told me the truth," she said finally. "That I'll never be enough for your world. That people will laugh at you, at us. That I'll only bring you down." My chest tightened. I wanted to shout, to tell her none of that mattered, that the gatekeeper was lying, that she was the only thing that made me feel alive. But before I could speak, she shook her head. "Please," she whispered. "Don't make this harder." And just like that, she turned and walked away again. But this time, I didn't stay silent. I followed her, weaving through the crowd, past flashing cameras and murmuring voices. The gatekeeper's eyes burned into my back, but I didn't care. I caught her near the exit, my voice breaking through the music and chatter. "You think you're protecting me by leaving," I said, "but you're not. You're protecting her." She froze. Slowly, she turned. "What do you mean?" "She's afraid," I said, my words sharp now. "Not of you. Of losing her power. She doesn't care about me. She cares about control. And she knew the moment you came into my life, she was losing it." Her eyes widened, uncertainty flickering across her face. "She lied to you," I pressed on. "She convinced you to walk away because she couldn't stand the thought of me choosing you over her influence. She rejected you not because you weren't worthy, but because you were the only one who ever truly was." For a moment, silence stretched between us, heavy and fragile. I could see her heart fighting itself, torn between the lies she had believed and the truth she wanted to accept. Then came the voice that shattered it all. "Enough." The gatekeeper stormed toward us, her heels striking the marble like gunshots. Her smile was gone now, replaced by raw anger. "You don't belong here," she spat at her. "You'll ruin him, can't you see? You'll never understand this world. You'll never fit in." The entire hall seemed to fall into a hush. Guests turned, whispers spread. Cameras swiveled, catching the unfolding drama. And for the first time, the mask the gatekeeper had worn for years slipped off in front of everyone. I stepped between them, my voice cold but clear. "No. She doesn't have to fit into this world. Because she's the only reason I want to escape it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks. But I didn't care. My eyes stayed locked on hers, the woman I loved, the woman who had been told she wasn't enough. "You were never unworthy," I said softly. "It was this world that was unworthy of you." The gatekeeper tried to speak, to argue, but her words stumbled. For the first time, the power she had clung to slipped from her grasp. People weren't nodding in agreement with her anymore. They were staring with judgment, whispering behind their hands. And in that moment, I knew the tide had turned. But whether it would be enough to bring her back to me, that was still uncertain. Because wounds left by lies don't heal overnight. The room still buzzed with whispers after the outburst, but I walked away from the crowd, not caring who saw or what was said. She followed a few steps behind, hesitant, still carrying the weight of doubt that the gatekeeper had planted inside her heart. I could feel her uncertainty, like a fragile thread about to snap. We found a quiet corner of the hall, far from the cameras and curious eyes. I turned to her, searching her face for even the smallest sign of trust, of belief in what I had just confessed. "Why are you letting her decide for you?" I asked gently, though my voice carried the ache of months of silence. "Why are you believing her lies over what you know is real between us?" She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "Because she's right," she whispered. "I don't belong in this life. I don't understand your world. I'll only ever be an outsider. And sooner or later, you'll regret choosing me." My heart broke again, not because of her words, but because I could hear the fear beneath them. She wasn't speaking her truth, she was speaking the fear that had been handed to her like a curse. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. Listen to me. You are the only part of my life that feels real. Do you understand that? These people, these parties, the money, the endless noise, it's all an illusion. But you cut through all of it. You see me, not the billionaire, not the headlines, not the wealth. Just me. Her eyes lifted to mine, glistening, torn between hope and hesitation. For a heartbeat, it felt like the walls were crumbling, like she wanted to believe. But before either of us could speak again, the gatekeeper's shadow loomed once more. You're making a mistake, she said firmly, her voice low but filled with venom. If you walk this path, you'll lose everything. The board won't respect you. Investors will laugh. Your empire will suffer. And all because of her. I turned to her slowly, anger burning through the calm facade I had worn for too long. No, I said, my voice steady but sharp as steel. The only mistake I ever made was letting you decide who I could love. That ends tonight. The gatekeeper's face twisted with shock, as though she couldn't comprehend a world where her influence no longer bound me. For years, she had been the silent ruler of my personal life, the unseen judge of who was allowed close and who was cast away. But now, in front of everyone, I stripped that power away. You've built your place in my life on fear, I continued. But fear has no place in love. And love is the only thing I won't compromise. Gasps whispered through the crowd, but all I saw was her, my love, my almost wife, the woman who had been rejected not by me, but by the poisonous grip of someone else's control. Her lips parted, as though she wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, tears shimmered in her eyes, and in that moment I knew this was far from over. One declaration, one confrontation, wasn't enough to heal what had been broken. The gala ended in chaos. Journalists swarmed with questions. Guests left murmuring scandals under their breath. The gatekeeper disappeared into the shadows, humiliated but not defeated. I knew she would strike back. And she would strike hard. That night, back in the silence of my penthouse, I stared out at the skyline once more. A city of steel and glass stretched before me, a city I had conquered. Yet inside, I felt more fragile than ever. Because I realized something terrifying, this wasn't just about love anymore. This was about a war. A war between control and freedom, lies and truth, power and heart. And I had only just chosen my side. The next morning, the storm had already begun. Headlines exploded across every major network. Billionaire confronts inner circle at gala. Mysterious woman caught in love triangle. Power struggle inside the empire. My phone didn't stop ringing. Board members, investors, journalists, people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanting answers. Every voice carried the same tone, concern mixed with judgment, as if my personal life was nothing more than a business deal gone wrong. But none of that mattered to me. What mattered was her. I called her, over and over. No answer. I sent messages, hoping she would respond, hoping she would let me explain further, hoping she would see that I wasn't backing down this time. Hours passed, silence consuming every attempt. Then finally, late in the evening, a single message arrived. "You don't need to fight for me. I'm not worth losing everything over." I stared at the words for a long time, my chest tightening. She still believed the lies. She still thought she was a burden, not a blessing. I typed back, my fingers trembling on the screen. "I'm not fighting because you're a risk. I'm fighting because you're the only thing worth the fight." I hit send and waited, the city lights outside flickering like restless stars. But no reply came. Meanwhile, the gatekeeper was already making her move. She knew her public outburst had damaged her carefully crafted image, so she went to work behind closed doors. She called the board, whispered into the ears of powerful allies, planted stories in the press. Her narrative was simple: I had lost control. That I was letting a nobody cloud my judgment. That the empire itself was at risk because I couldn't separate love from logic. It was clever, ruthless, and effective. Within days, pressure began mounting. Investors demanded meetings. Shareholders threatened questions. Even my closest advisors started hesitating, their loyalty wobbling under the weight of the scandal. And through it all, she, my love, remained silent. One night, after a particularly brutal meeting where half the board hinted at restructuring leadership, I found myself back at the place where it all began, the charity foundation where I first met her. The building was empty, dark except for the glow of streetlights outside. I walked through the halls, remembering her laughter echoing in these very walls, remembering the way she had looked at me as though I was just a man, not a billionaire. That memory was my anchor, my reminder of why I couldn't give up. And then, as if destiny had led me there, I saw her. She was in the small library room, surrounded by books, her hands trembling as she closed a dusty cover. She looked up, startled, as I stepped inside. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, the same words she had spoken at the gala. "Neither should you," I replied gently. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything left unsaid. Finally, I spoke, my voice breaking under the weight of truth. "I don't care about the empire," I said. "If it falls tomorrow, let it fall. I've built it once, I can build again. But I can't build another you. I can't rebuild what I feel when I'm with you." Her eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "You don't understand. They'll never accept me. They'll drag you down until there's nothing left." "Then let them," I whispered, stepping closer. "Because I'd rather fall with you than rise without you." Her breath caught, her walls trembling, her heart caught in a war between fear and love. For the first time, I saw the crack in her doubt, the moment she realized the lies she had believed might not be the truth after all. But just as that fragile hope began to surface, my phone buzzed sharply in my pocket. I glanced down and froze. It was a message from my assistant, urgent, almost panicked. "She's moving against you. Documents leaked. Meeting called. Tomorrow morning. Be ready." I knew instantly who she was. The gatekeeper wasn't finished. She had drawn her sword, and the battle was about to begin in the one place she still held power, inside my empire. I looked back at the woman before me, her face a mixture of fear and longing, and I made a silent vow. This time, I wouldn't let her be the casualty. This time, the war would end. The morning arrived with a sharpness that cut through every hour of sleep I tried to steal. My calendar was cleared, my advisors were already waiting, and the boardroom was prepared like a battlefield. I knew this wasn't just a meeting, it was a trial. A trial for my leadership, for my choices, and, in their eyes, for my sanity. When I walked in, every eye turned. Some carried disappointment, others calculation, and a few, quiet hope. The gatekeeper sat at the far end, her expression calm, almost smug. She had positioned herself perfectly, as though she were the voice of reason, and I, the reckless billionaire led astray by love. The chairman cleared his throat. "We've received concerning reports," he began carefully. "Media speculation, leaks about internal disputes, investor unease. Many of these seem to originate from your personal life." The words hung heavy in the air. They weren't talking about strategy or profit margins, they were talking about her. They were talking about the woman I loved, and how the gatekeeper had painted her as a weakness, a liability. I leaned forward, my voice calm but steady. "Let's be clear. My personal life is not your jurisdiction. My leadership, my vision, my results, that's what this company stands on. And unless any of you can say I've failed in those, then what I do with my heart is none of your concern." A few murmurs rippled around the table. Some nodded, others frowned. The gatekeeper's lips curved into the faintest smile, as though she had expected my defiance. "Vision is one thing," she said smoothly, "but perception is another. Perception shapes markets, investors, and partnerships. And right now, perception is that you are distracted, vulnerable, and being influenced by someone who doesn't belong here." Her words cut like glass. I recognized the trap. She wasn't attacking me directly, she was attacking her. Painting her as the outsider, the burden, the reason I could fall. I took a deep breath. Every part of me wanted to lash out, to defend her fiercely. But anger would only feed the story she wanted to create. Instead, I steadied myself, and spoke with a clarity that silenced the room. "You're right about one thing," I said. "Perception does matter. And the perception I want this company to carry is not one of fear or prejudice. It's strength. It's authenticity. It's truth. And the truth is, for too long, I've let others decide what's appropriate for me, who is worthy to stand beside me. That ends now. I won't let fear dictate my choices, and I certainly won't let power games destroy what actually gives me strength." For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of my words settled over the table like a storm about to break. Then, one of the younger board members leaned forward. "With respect," he said carefully, "you've built an empire because you trust your instincts. If this is where your instinct leads you, then perhaps we should remember that." The gatekeeper stiffened, her smile faltering. It was small, but it was a crack, a sign her influence was beginning to weaken. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. She slid a folder across the table, her voice sharp now. "Then perhaps your instinct should explain this. Leaked reports. Confidential figures. Sensitive documents. All tied to someone in your personal circle. Ask yourself who benefits most from this chaos. The folder lay before me like a loaded weapon. I opened it slowly, scanning the contents. My blood ran cold. It was fabricated, I could see it instantly, numbers twisted, signatures forged, trails designed to point suspicion at her. The trap was laid perfectly. The implication was clear: the woman I loved was not just unworthy, she was dangerous. The board shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between me and the folder. The gatekeeper sat back, her eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of a predator who believed the prey had nowhere left to run. For a moment, the room was suffocating. I could almost feel her victory tightening around my throat. But then, something inside me shifted. I had spent years building this empire, facing competitors, regulators, governments, even entire industries. I had faced all of them and won. And now, was I supposed to bow to lies simply because they were dressed as truth? No. I closed the folder, pushed it back across the table, and looked directly at the gatekeeper. "I've built rockets to reach Mars," I said firmly, "and you think I can't recognize a forged report when I see one? This isn't evidence. This is desperation. And the fact that you'd stoop this low tells me everything I need to know about your loyalty." Gasps filled the room. The gatekeeper's face tightened, her mask slipping again. I stood, letting my voice carry over the silence. "I will not let this company, or my life, be ruled by fear, lies, or control. Not anymore. If any of you believe I've lost my vision, say it now. But if you still believe in what we've built together, then stand with me. Because I promise you this, I will lead us further than any headline, scandal, or betrayal could ever take us." The boardroom froze. Then slowly, one by one, heads began to nod. Not all, but enough. Enough to tip the balance. The gatekeeper sat in silence, fury burning in her eyes, her power slipping through her fingers. For the first time, I had won, not just for myself, but for her. For the woman who had been cast out, rejected, doubted. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because even as the meeting ended, I could feel it: the gatekeeper wasn't finished. She would come back, sharper, more dangerous, more ruthless than ever. And the question was no longer if I could protect my empire. It was whether I could protect the love I was willing to risk everything for. The evening descended like a cloak of unease. The boardroom battle was over, but the war was far from done. I could feel it in the way the gatekeeper left the room, not defeated, not broken, but simmering with quiet rage. She didn't need to win in public. People like her preferred the shadows. By the time I returned home, the city lights glimmered against the glass walls, a deceptive calm outside while a storm gathered inside. She was waiting for me, her eyes searching mine, anxious but steady. She had heard whispers already, leaks, headlines hinting that she was the source of corporate betrayal. "I didn't do this," she said softly, almost pleading. "You know I didn't." Her words struck me harder than the accusation itself. She had been thrown into the fire by forces she never chose, and yet she still thought I might doubt her. That broke something inside me. I took her hands firmly. I know. Don't ever think for a second I believe otherwise. This isn't your fault. It's hers. Relief washed over her face, but behind it lingered fear. Fear not of me, but of what the gatekeeper might do next. Because this wasn't about rumors anymore. It was about survival. That night, as she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, I stood by the window, watching the city pulse with life. My empire was vast, powerful, but it also made me a target. And now, she was the easiest way to hurt me. The gatekeeper knew it. And she would use it. The first strike came the next morning. Articles flooded the media, not from official outlets but from shadowy corners of the internet, anonymous sources, confidential insiders, all whispering the same poison, that the woman I loved was a manipulator, a fortune hunter, a spy in the heart of a billionaire's life. The details were fabricated, but they were detailed enough to sound real. Photos twisted out of context, conversations spliced, even private moments we thought were ours alone somehow exposed. She read them in silence, her face pale, her eyes wet with tears she refused to let fall. "Why are they doing this?" she whispered. "Why me?" I wanted to tell her the truth, that it wasn't about her at all. She was simply the weapon. The gatekeeper couldn't attack me outright, so she had turned her sights on the one person who mattered most. But how do you explain that kind of cruelty without breaking someone's spirit? So I did the only thing I could. I pulled her close and whispered, "Because you're worth more than they'll ever understand. And because they know I'd burn the world before I let them take you away from me." Still, love was not enough to stop the firestorm. Invitations to events suddenly got lost. Partnerships grew cold. Even among friends, there were sideways glances, whispers when they thought I couldn't hear. The gatekeeper had turned society itself into her weapon. And yet, what she underestimated was resilience. What she underestimated was us. Every insult only made me hold her hand tighter in public. Every headline only made me speak her name louder in private. And slowly, some began to see the truth. That this wasn't scandal, it was sabotage. But the gatekeeper wasn't done. Her next move was darker, more personal. One night, as we returned from an event, we found the door to her apartment ajar. Nothing stolen, but everything disturbed. Drawers pulled open, photos overturned, clothes scattered. Not a robbery. A message. She stood frozen, her breath shallow. I wrapped my arms around her, scanning every corner for hidden threats, rage boiling in my veins. "They want me to feel unsafe," she whispered. "They want you to leave me," I corrected, my jaw tightening. "But they've underestimated something. You're not alone. Not anymore." In that moment, I made a silent vow. If the gatekeeper wanted a war, then I would fight, not just with power and money, but with truth. Because love wasn't my weakness. It was my weapon. But deep inside, I also knew, when people like her are cornered, they don't retreat. They strike harder. And I could feel it, her final, most dangerous strike was still ahead. The days that followed were eerily quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't bring peace but tension, the calm before a storm you can't yet see. Every time I stepped outside with her, I could feel eyes on us. Not just paparazzi lenses, but something colder, sharper. The gatekeeper had vanished from sight, but that only made her more dangerous. Then, one evening, the storm broke. We were driving back from a dinner, the city glowing with late-night neon. She leaned her head on my shoulder, exhaustion softening her voice. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "All of this, the fight, the headlines, the war because of me?" I tightened my grip on her hand. "Never. Not for a second." But before I could say more, headlights flared in the rearview mirror, too bright, too close. A black SUV trailing us, aggressive, relentless. I instructed the driver to change lanes, but the SUV followed, swerving, pressing closer. Her eyes widened, panic rising. "What's happening?" I didn't answer. I already knew. This wasn't random. This was orchestrated. The SUV cut in front, forcing us to a screeching halt on a deserted stretch of road. Doors flew open, men in dark suits stepping out, their faces hidden. The gatekeeper didn't come herself. No, people like her never get their hands dirty. But her presence lingered in their cold precision. One of them opened her door, reaching for her arm. Her scream tore through the night. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I was out of the car before they could react, fury surging through every nerve. Money, power, status, all of it meant nothing here. This was primal. This was about protecting the woman I loved. I confronted them, my voice steel. "Touch her again, and I swear, billionaire or not, you won't walk away." For a tense moment, the air held still. They weren't expecting resistance, not like this. They expected me to cower, to negotiate, to give her up as though she were collateral. But I didn't flinch. Because for the first time, my wealth wasn't a shield or a target, it was irrelevant. What mattered was love, raw and unbreakable. Finally, after a silent exchange of glances, they retreated, climbing back into their SUV. The engine roared, and within seconds, they vanished into the night, leaving only tire marks and a silence more deafening than the chase itself. She was trembling when I returned to her side, her fingers clutching mine like a lifeline. "They were going to take me," she whispered, her voice breaking. I pulled her close, pressing my forehead to hers. "Not while I'm breathing. Not ever." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. The gatekeeper had escalated beyond whispers and headlines. She had declared war in its purest form. And wars like this never ended cleanly. The following morning, I received a message. No signature, no name, just a line on my phone: "She doesn't belong in your world. Next time, I won't miss." It wasn't just a warning, it was a promise. I realized then that protecting her wasn't enough. I needed to dismantle the gatekeeper's power completely. No more defense. No more waiting for the next move. It was time to strike back. I looked at her, still shaken but trying to be strong, and I made another silent vow. This wouldn't end with fear. This wouldn't end with us hiding. This would end with the gatekeeper losing everything she used to keep us apart. And for the first time, I smiled, not out of joy, but out of certainty. Because the gatekeeper had underestimated the one thing even money couldn't buy, a man who has nothing left to fear when love is on the line.